Hello YouTube, welcome back. I'm getting ready to get started on my next project. Just recently I uploaded a video of an animated bust where the head moves back and forth. And during the taping of that video, I kind of mentioned that I picked up two of these styrofoam heads right here because I had an intention on making two different busts for this year's display. I also mentioned what my game plan was. I was going to take one of my old props that I've had for a couple years now and essentially give it new life, facelift essentially. I'm going to show you a picture of that prop right now. As you see in the pictures, it just looks like an old brick-looking structure, kind of tucked away in the trees, with a little front piece on and that kind of stuff. So what my game plan is to bring it here in the shop, cut out that center section where that little face piece is, build a bust and all that stuff that's going to fit inside there and everything. Kind of like that recessed look like I did with the mausoleum with the doll. But obviously it'll look more like a brick structure instead of a concrete structure. I'm going to put a few extra details and all that kind of stuff like that on there just to kind of give it a better look. But obviously, first things first, it has been sitting out for a couple years. So I'm going to have to bring it here in my shop, take a look at it, see what I'm working with, see what kind of damage Mother Nature's done to it over the last couple years, see if it's salvageable, or if I essentially got to start all over from scratch again kind of thing. So let's go ahead and get it here in the shop, see what we can do with it, and let's get started. Alright, so here's one of my fancy little drawings. Now right now, currently the prop is only two-sided, and I plan on just leaving it two-sided because you only really see two sides of it based on, where it's sitting, and I'm going to put it back in that same location. But essentially what I'm going to be doing is, I'm still going to have the foam on the bottom. I'm going to cut out the center. I'm going to mount the bust inside here. I'm going to do like that staggered kind of block kind of look on the sides here, going up the side. I'll have to build a little bit of a support system for the roof and all that kind of stuff. And then these sides right here where I have it set at 9 feet, or sorry, not 8 feet, and then 7 foot to the taper. So with that, a lot of these sizes are going to be determined based on the overall condition that stuff's in once I start moving it. Right now it looks to be okay, but I also haven't really got in there to look at it yet. So let's go ahead and get it out, get it in the shop, and see what I'm working with. You can see Mother Nature wasn't super great to them. Of course, also I did leave them out there in the yard for the last couple of years. So I mean, what did I expect? But when you kind of look at all this up here, I mean, it kind of looked like it held up pretty good. But down here where that foam was and being right on the ground, that's pretty much what kind of rotted out. So since I know that that's rotted out, I went ahead and went to the hardware store, picked up some new 2x4s, picked up another full sheet. This will be the front side. What my game plan is going to be that since it looks to be pretty decent from there to there, I'm going to go ahead and I'll be cutting it off straight. That's going to determine the pitch of my roof now. So now that's going to tell me how much my roof's going to come down because it's going to have to match the height of that. I'm going to see if I can get this off because I kind of wanted to reuse that piece. So what my game plan is right now, because we've had a lot of rain here in Florida in the last few weeks, these things are kind of soft. So I'm hoping this will work to my advantage. I'm going to get them off the wood. I'm going to lay them flat on my floor here. I'm going to lay like a sheet of plywood on top of them, put some weights on them. I'm going to turn all the fans on, let all the fans blow on them. I'll probably let them sit here for a couple days and see if maybe I can get those to flatten back out just a little bit. And then I'll see how much I could recycle from them. And being that I might be able to, I might just make this three-sided since I'm going to have the material to do it. But we'll just see how it goes once I get these apart. Alright, we're into the next day. I have a whole bunch of fans going to help try to dry those things. I went ahead and moved this over to here. I'm going to go ahead and stick that on top of it and start making some measurements. I started thinking about, the height that I need to be, all of those. I did a rough measurement, but even if it's a little off, I'm not too worried about because I'm going to be putting that like one foot border on the bottom here, and I'm going to be doing a border on the top. So even if I have to like take that and say split the difference, I'll still be fine. So I'm going to go ahead and start working on this for the time being, get this whole front section done. So that has a few days to do what it needs to do, and then I will start finishing the rest. All right, so one of the next things I'm going to be doing, because since I'm going to be putting all those little corner pieces on it, and I'm going to be putting a roof on there, to try to make this thing into 3 separate pieces and then carrying out there and reassembling it and trying not to damage all the little pieces, I'm going to end up building this in one piece, so it's going to be too big and too heavy to carry. So I'm going to be screwing some 4x4s to the bottom to essentially create kind of like a pallet kind of deal. And what that's going to allow me to do is when I'm ready to move it, I'll carry it out into its spot with my tractor. All right, I'm letting this dry. So in the meantime, I'm going to start working on the bust. I got my block of foam here. Now what I did is I just went online. I found a bust, a basic shape that I kind of want to go with, you know, with a little bit of a taper and all that. What I did is I took a piece of cardboard, cut it out. I made myself a center line here. So what my game plan is I got that center line there, and you see the little staggered lines I have here. So what my plan is you know, I'll just be setting it right on that line right there, trace it, flip it over, trace it, and what that's going to do is that's going to make it a lot more easier and symmetrical when I go to do it. The other one I had to keep kind of playing with it because I was just trying to eyeball it. So I'm going to make two templates, one of looking at it and one of the side profile. So this way I can kind of cut this way first and then cut the other way after that. So I'm going to make my second template and I'm going to start working on that. right, I'm to this point right here. You see I got the head kind of pushed down inside there. Now I'm going to be doing some refining to it. Now the bottom half isn't going to be that tall. I'm going to, once I get where I think the bust needs to be, I'm going to kind of cut that into a taper to start being able to make the bottom part, the part that it's going to be sitting on top of. So I'm going to go ahead and start taking a knife and some sandpaper, and I'm going to start trying to shape this to a really good torso shape. So let's get started on that. Alright, I got it sitting here inside. I went ahead and I made another extra piece for the bottom. So this will be attached to there. Obviously the head's going to be glued in, and then I got to start with my caulking technique again like I did on the last one, where I'm going to find a picture of essentially what I want. I'm going to try to obviously do the whole thing where I'm going to kind of have a collar here, some form of jacket kind of look to it, some form of facial hair depending on what I find, and obviously some regular hair to it. Alright, so I got this thing all put together. Now I wasn't really paying attention. I probably should have put this one on the other side because this is the side profile that you see. But I also was planning on, since this is kind of already much lighter and kind of faded out compared to this, I'm going to take a small section of this, that I cut off for the arch here, take it to a paint place and see if I get like a quart of red that's really close to this color. And I'm going to repaint the sides. So this way it all looks really close to being the same right from the very beginning, when I first put it out there. Obviously I'm going to do some aging on it, things like that, but I want to kind of make them look the same right from the very beginning. And obviously the brick didn't line up, like you wanted it to, just because of the way things worked out. But once I put those big corner pieces on here, and this thing is kind of tucked up in the trees, you're not going to see that really anyways. So the next step is I'm going to work on my base, my piece that's going across the top here, figure out my roof, probably get my front piece glued in, and then when that's dry and ready for me to be able to work with, I'll start continuing working on this one again. Alright, I went ahead and I stuck the face piece on. Obviously it was a little warped from the old wall, kind of being wavy, so what I did is I put a bunch of caulking underneath of it and just put a bunch of paint cans on it to weight it down until it's dry. What I'm doing for the roof support portion, you can see where I just cut a 2x4 to match the taper of the roof. Took another 2x4, fed it down my table saw to create that taper, and did another piece at the bottom. So what that'll do is that'll make it so when I run my foam board, it'll be able to touch here, and it'll be able to touch up there, and I'll be able to anchor it, caulk it, seal it, and that's how I'll be able to put my roof on here to create, you know, the support for the roof system. Okay, I got the sides painted. You see, definitely matches a lot better than it did before. I started putting my trim pieces on, all my border pieces. Got the centerpiece on. I still want to put some little bevel pieces here, like I did here, on all this stuff to give it a nicer transition. And now I'm working on making my little pieces that are going to go right here. And have you ever had those moments where you think to yourself, man, it sounded great, until you have to start doing it? Well, I'm in the process of making all my lines and all my marks for all of them. So this is going to be definitely a time-consuming part, but I think it's going to look good when it's done. So I'm going to continue marking this out and start cutting it, and hopefully get those on this very shortly, and I'll be standing it upright. All right, to kind of show what I'm doing here, you can see where I essentially made my full width. That would counter the whole front surface essentially. And you see where I added a secondary line right here. What I'm doing is I'll be cutting the center out. Once I cut the center out on every one of those, then it's just one straight cut there, one straight cut there, and then those two front pieces are done. Then I'll just duplicate that same thing again here for the side, and then another two for the side but towards the back. But I figured this is kind of the easiest way, because I can just literally just cut the square out and straight, done, kind of cut. So I'm going to continue moving forward with it. Okay, so one of the things I did here is when I cut the first piece for the top, I knew I still had that 3/4 that's going to go here. So I compensated by making this 3/4 of an inch wider than I made the other ones. So this way when it overhangs. So what that's going to do is once this goes on here like this, you see everything will come out nice and even. Obviously I can do some shifting of this before the caulking's dry. And then once the caulking's fully dry, then I'll come back with my, either my router or a knife, and I'll cut the lines right here to simulate the individual blocks. And then obviously then I'll peel all the foils off, and then I'll get everything painted. So this way it all looks like the corner, blocks within the brick structure. All right, the next day, I'm going to go ahead and stand this up and see what it looks like. And then I'm going to start peeling off all the foil. Still going to add my little bevel pieces to these sections, but I figured it'd be easier to do that while standing up. So let's go ahead and stand this thing up and see what it looks like. Alright, I'm to this point right here. The next step is going to be to paint all the foam kind of a light gray color, like a really light gray color. Now I'll be doing the roof pretty much almost at the very end, just before I take it out. The next step is going to be, I'm going to start working on the bus now. I'm going to start working on, putting the, caulking on there to give it the look of some form of clothing, facial hair, and regular hair. Alright, I went ahead and decided I'm going to go ahead and animate this prop after all. What my gameplay is where the bust sits inside the that little cubby. I'm just going to have it move back and forth just a little bit like this. Plus, I'm also going to paint it with some black light paint, so I'm hoping it's going to give it kind of like a nice glowing, floating, kind of illusion to it. Obviously, I got to build a rig to do this and support it, so what I'm going to be using is an old spindle. I have an old riding motor deck. I'm a bit of a pack rat. I don't get rid of anything, especially if there's something on it that I think I might be used for a future project. And I feel this right here is going to be perfect. It has bearings on both sides. It has nice mounting points where I can mount it through something solid. It's going to be able to support the weight. It's going to work really good. It's going to move freely and all that. Then what I'll be doing is I'll be using the blade for the part where the motor links to it, to get the back and forth swing. So I'm going to just cut this right here, weld a bolt on there wherever I need it to be for the correct amount of distance I need. I got the nut to be able to put that back on. Then the part that's going to go on the back of the bus is a piece of conduit. This will go right on here, right like that. What I'll be doing is drilling a hole right here, welding a nut to it, and then have a bolt. And that'll make it to where when I slide it through the prop and put this on to the spindle, I'll be able to tighten that up, and that's what's going to lock it onto there, and then this will be attached to the back of the bust. So, but first things first, I'm going to have to go ahead and start getting this mounted into the prop, make sure it's nice and solid, it's not going to move or anything like that, and then move forward. Alright, to kind of show what I got going on here. Here I got my spindle. Here I got that piece of pipe. You can see where I have a set screw in there. I have a little bracket that's going to go on the back side of the bust. Essentially, when I get it mounted in there, this will go on. All I do is just tighten this up, and that's what's going to give me my swing. And then obviously I'll have my thing in the back here with my motor, and that's all there's going to be to creating this rig. Alright, I got my support rig built for the bust itself. Essentially what this is going to do is fits on here. It'll be glued and anchored in place. That's going to go right there. That's going to be the part that's going to actually attach to essentially my bearing rig that I have built. So once this is all dry and I'm able to get ready to paint it, then I'll get this fully anchored to it. This is still kind of a little soft, so I still got to give it another day or so. But the reason I'm propping it up is because he's a little front heavy now, with all the extra up here, so I just don't want him to fall over. That's what that's for. Alright, so you see I got the rig going here. Now I'm going to have to take my washers and add a little weld in the washers to kind of close them up, because you'll see where it kind of does like a little slide thing, see it moves back and forth, so I'm getting this like kind of jerking kind of action right here. So I do got to fix that. You see where it's just going to move just a little bit. And if I need to, I can always drop that down to move a little bit less once I get the rig on there, the actual bust on there. I can make a decision if I feel that it's moving too much, and I can always make adjustments to make it move a little bit less. It'll all depend on what it looks like once the bust is actually on there. All right, I kind of wanted to show the one of the last steps in my process of when I'm doing this. You can see where I have the cardboard on here. Now that a lot of this caulking is pretty much dry to the point where I can kind of work with it without putting a bunch of dimples in it, I want to make sure that my jacket has a nice straight, crisp looking line to it. So what I do is I just cut some thin cardboard, nothing super thick. I cut it to the shape that I want, make sure they're on, symmetrical, straight like I want them. Then what I do is I'll pump a little caulking right here. I'll smear it down, smooth everything in, and then once it gets to a certain point where it's dry to where I can kind of mess with it, then I'll just pull the cardboard off, and that'll give me a nice straight, crisp line all the way up and over. I still got to add the last little bit of detail here, and then a defined line here, and some buttons for the shirt portion. But once I do that, this one will be pretty much about done and ready for paint. Alright, I gave the caulking a little bit of time to dry. I'm going to go ahead and pull the cardboard off so we can see what it looks like. Now, because the cardboard has like the little teeny holes in it, the caulking can kind of get trapped in it. So it's always a good idea to lightly run a razor blade down it, just to make sure you free it up before you try to pull on it. Now it's not dry. It's you know, skinned up enough where I should be able to work with it without disturbing it. There's one side. There's the other side. So see, that gives me a very distinct, nice line. Now next thing I'll just fill these little holes in with a little bit of caulking, and then once it's dry, I'll be ready to paint. Alright, I went ahead and mounted it inside here. I figured before I start doing any kind of painting on it, I would check to see what my travel is, like how far it's moving back and forth, especially on that bottom right there. I wanted to make sure it wasn't moving too far or too less. Like I said, I just wanted a gradual little rock to it. I didn't want it to look like it was like, say, like on a swing set or something. Just enough movement to where when he's lit up with the black light, it just looks like it's essentially floating in there, kind of just tipping back and forth kind of thing. So I think I'm pretty good with the distance that it's traveling. I don't think I'm going to mess with it anymore. So I'm going to get ready to start painting this one. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and get this painted. Now, usually most marble statues and busts and stuff like that, they have they're more of a white color. And based on a lot of the pictures I've been looking at, when they start to kind of age a little bit, they kind of get a little bit of like a brownish kind of tint to them. So I'm going to paint this. I'm going to start off with painting it white. Then I'm going to mist and kind of feather in some kind of off-white brownish color on it. Alright, so that's all painted. I'm going to let that completely dry before I do any of the blacklight paint, mainly because I've got to do some experimenting with a few of the blacklight paints to see which one I think is going to work the best. In the meantime, I'm going to start doing some aging on the actual structure itself. I'm going to have to do that inside the shop because it's just too big to move around and get out here just to do that. So I'm going to have to do that actually inside the shop. But I'm going to start working on that next and let this sit out here and dry for a little bit. Alright, I made it to this point right here. I'm kind of playing around with some fake vines and such on it. You can see where I definitely darkened up and put a little bit of browns, greens, blacks on the structure itself. You'll kind of notice that the bust is a little bit different than it was a few moments ago. I didn't like all the brown that I put on there, so I kind of started over and dialed it back some. So I have a little bit of brown in a few areas. The rest is kind of like a grayish black that I kind of used mostly up like on the shoulders and stuff like that to simulate collection of dirt and dust and that kind of stuff, and then somewhat run down. So I'm a little bit happier with it at the moment. But only thing really left now is to do the roof, And to get some of that transparent blacklight paint, the reason I want transparent is because if the lights are not on, I want you to see it as is. And then when the blacklight comes on, then he glows. Otherwise, if I use any of the other stuff, I'm going to make them either look blue or I'm going to make them look yellow in order to have that. And I really don't want it to look like that. I want it to look like this when the lights are on, essentially off, and then glowing when the black light's on. So, but I only got a few more steps left, and should be able to call this one done. All right, with all the caulking dry on the roof, I'm going to go ahead and paint the roof. Now, the paint I'm going to use is some concoction that I made a while back for another prop, but I just didn't like the color. It's kind of a gray, but it has like a greenish tint to it, which I think would be good for this because of where it's going to be sitting. It's going to be sitting amongst a bunch of trees, so the top would be kind of greenish kind of color from all the the leaves and algae and all that stuff kind of building up on top of it. So I've been kind of holding on to it, not sure what I'm going to use it for, but I'm going to use it for this right here. So I'm going to go ahead and paint the roof. All right, I'm back working on the bust. Unfortunately, I had to start all over again. I'm going to kind of explain why, so definitely listen to this because this has been extremely frustrating for me. I went ahead and I picked up that stuff and got it in the mail. It's that, that paint that only reacts to black light. This is kind of that stuff like when you go somewhere and they put the little stamp on the back of your hand, and it only shows up in a black light. This stuff works really good. It's actually really cool looking. Kind of like you see right here. As you see, you don't see anything on here. It doesn't look like there's anything on this, foam right here until you get it into the black light. So you can see, I mean, it looks really good. So what I decided to do is instead of painting the whole thing like I was talking about, I decided to kind of do like, those pictures where like when you shine a black light on them or make it look like lightning striking at them or something like that, they change the image. So I decided I'm going to go that route instead. I think it'd be, it'd have a little bit better effect, or it would look a little bit cooler. So what I did is I painted the face as a skull. I did a rib cage and all that kind of stuff on there. But that stuff is very watery. So what happened was I ended up with a few runs, and you also can't wipe it off neither. It just wants to smear. So now even though it looked okay, it didn't look good at all. So I was like, all right, well, I'll let that dry overnight. I'll just go ahead and repaint it. So I went ahead and put 2 layers of paint on there, re-aged it, got it ready to go again, turned the black light on, so I could start doing my new outline, and realized that the image was still coming through it. So apparently 2 layers of paint wasn't enough to make it go away. So I added another 2 layers of paint, checked it, still see the image coming through it. So I added another 2 layers of paint. So at this point I have 6 layers of paint on this thing, and the image is still coming through it. So there's something about that paint with the latex paint. It's like the latex paint just can't conceal it or cover it enough to make it go away. So in order for me to finally get that image to go away, the reason why it's gray is I end up having to go with an actual automotive primer. Now I put the primer on there, and now the image has disappeared. So you can see where, let me get my light here. You see where absolutely nothing is popping through now, where before it was still coming through. Even with all the lights on in the shop, I could still see it, especially if I had the black light that close to it. So it ended up taking 7 coats of paint to get it to where the image is gone, to where now I can actually start over. Of course, obviously, if I would have known in the very beginning that the automotive primer would have concealed it that way, I could have saved myself a bunch of time and a bunch of paint waste, not doing all those extra layers, in order to make it go away. So, but now I'm finally at the point where I can restart on it again. So I'm going to go ahead and paint it white, re-age it, get it ready to go, get it back to the state that it was in. I'm going to retrace my new image with pencil first, so I can definitely be assured that I definitely like what I see. Then after that, then I'll go ahead and repaint my image, get it all done, get it back in the prop, and hopefully I can get this finished up. Okay, I'm working on the lighting right now, and kind of like I was talking about, where I was going to use kind of like that. I like those pictures where when you put form a black light on them, you see an alternate image. And a lot of times, either you got to lose your ambient light, or you can kind of leave the ambient light on there depending on how intense your ambient light is versus your black light and all that kind of stuff. And I was originally going to do it as kind of like a lightning strike, but I'm not really going to do any kind of lightning strike anywhere else within this the display. So I really don't want the lightning strike on this one prop only, because I think it'd look really out of place. And also, when you think about it, I'm essentially making a haunted graveyard, haunted cemetery kind of thing. And as we know, obviously, any kind of spiritual activity for a spirit to manifest or anything like that, they rob energy from any kind of source of some kind. So what my plan is, I'm going to kind of do it in reverse, where I'm actually going to use the ambient light to essentially get the person's attention by, once they trigger the motion sensor, the ambient light is actually going to flicker, which will get their attention towards the prop. And then obviously the ambient light will go completely out. The black lights will come on. They'll see the alternate image that's painted on there. And then the black lights will go out and the ambient light will come back on. And then obviously it'll be able to reset itself for the next person to hit the motion sensor. And I kind of feel that the best way for me to achieve that is one of these. It's those Peekaboo prop controllers from Fright Props. Now, I've been looking at these things for a number of years. I just have never bought one. But I figure for this one, I wanted to go ahead and get one, because all the videos I watched on, they look like they're very easy, very user-friendly, quick to program. You can change the programming on them multiple times. They save the program that you put in them, so you don't have to constantly redo them every time you turn them on. So I decided to pick one of these up, and I picked up the Peekaboo Junior 103. They also have a Junior 104. The difference between the two is the 103 is strictly just a relay box for triggering lights, a motor, maybe one of those electric solenoids for an air-powered prop. Whereas the 104, you can do audio in there, so like you can make it scream. I'm not really looking to do any kind of audio, so the 103 is perfect for what I'm doing. So right now I do have a little things program in here. I'm going to run that real fast right now. So you'll see where my ambient light is going to flicker, almost like it's like robbing that power source. And then the black lights will come on, then they'll see that alternate image. Then that'll go out, and then the ambient light will come back on. Then obviously it'll reset for the next person that triggers the motion sensor. So I think that's going to be the best way, not to mention that with it being real easy programmable, once I get my motion sensor set, every time I'll walk past it like probably 100 times and dial it into exactly how long I want this to do its thing, how long I want these to be on, and then reverse back to it. and this will allow me to literally make fine adjustments by just re-recording what I want to do. So, but I got the prop all done. I'm going to go ahead and turn the camera around, show you guys the finished product, with the bust in there, with it moving, with the paint that's on it. And then I'll shut the lights out and I'll show you the actual lighted aspect of the prop. So let's go ahead and see it. All right, so this is pretty much the finished prop. You see I got everything on. Everything's, painted, distressed, all put together. I got the bust in there. I try to keep them as mostly white as possible for the marble look. But, normal aging and distressing and stuff like that, you're going to get, shadowing and build up of, dark areas and stuff like that. So I try to do that on it, but I try to keep it to a minimum to really keep it as close to looking like a marble bust as possible. You see, I got him swinging back and forth. He has a nice little back and forth, almost like floating kind of, look inside the center there. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to go turn the lights out. And I'm going to kind of show you what it looks like with the ambient light, and then obviously when it goes to the alternate image. Now, the ambient light that I'm using is just kind of something I'm using for now for my for this demonstration. I'm sure once I actually have this fully set up in my display, the ambient light's probably going to be a little different than this. But I wanted something that was kind of low wattage, and this is essentially what I'm going to be using for that. So I said I'm going to do this in two ways. The first way is going to be from way back here, so you can kind of see the entire prop with the ambient light shining on the entire prop, and then with the black light. And then I'll bring the camera much closer to it, so this way you can see the details of the alternate image that the black light will project onto it. So I'm going to go ahead and shut the lights out. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and activate the trigger. All right, now I'm going to go ahead and get it closer to the prop so you can see the details better. Okay, I went ahead and turned the lights back on. I want you to be able to see a little more of the detail of the bust. Obviously, the jacket, the clothing, the facial hair, the hair on top, the distressing, and all that kind of stuff, so you can see the details a little bit better. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to shut the lights off now so you can see the actual alternate image a little bit closer so you can see the details of it. So I'm going to go ahead and shut the lights out and show you that part. Now we're closer to the relay box, so you're going to hear a lot more of the actual little relays clicking. But this is what it looks like up close. But there we go. Here's my finished prop with a nice little alternate twist to it. I hope you enjoyed this video of me taking an old prop and a new prop and kind of integrating the two together. If you like this video, hit that like button, subscribe, and as always, thanks for watching.